Hello, everyone. Tonight we are descending into the cracked clay of forgotten floodplains, sinking into a story so slow, so patient that even your own lungs might forget to keep up. This is the tale of creatures that did not move when the world changed. They did not run, did not adapt. They waited, underground, for rain, to breathe. Yes, breathe. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. Also, tell me in the comments where in the world are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's get started tonight. You lie buried. Not completely, just enough. Your shell forms a dome under a thin crust of hardened silt, and your nostrils, barely two pinholes, press against the roof of this tomb. Your heartbeat is a memory. Your muscles weigh a ton each, but that's fine, you've done this before. Above the sun glares like it has something to prove. Nothing moves. Not the birds, they've already left. Not the grasses they dried to dust weeks ago. The sky is a white oven lid, and you are a breathless bubble waiting for the first drop to fall. Because your kind doesn't breathe like others. You can't. Your size, your lungs, your semi-aquatic arrogance, they've trapped you. You've adapted, sure, but adaptation doesn't always mean convenience. You've simply made a deal. You trade movement for waiting energy, for stillness, breath, for rain. And now the dirt around you is beginning to soften just barely. A low vibration, almost like a whisper. Thunder. It starts so far away that the vibration comes before the sound and you feel it in your carapace first. One echo, then silence. You remain motionless. Patience is your weapon. Or your curse. Your lungs are not like a mammal's. They don't swell with every second. They ration. They store. They wait. For creatures like you, oxygen is a seasonal event. And when the dry spells stretch long enough, you do something few others can. You suspend yourself. You slow your metabolism to a crawl. Your blood cools. Your immune system takes a nap. You are not hibernating. Hibernation is for amateurs. You are a vault. There's something poetic about how you do this, though, to be fair. Poetry is more a human thing. But still, you bury yourself in a breathless cocoon of mud and wait for the world to come back to you. The ground above you darkens shade. You can sense it even before the first scent hits. Rain. Petrichor, they'll call it someday. The smell of wet dust rising. 100 miles of sky suddenly collapse into a single raindrop. Then another. The first drop hits your shell like a knock. You wait. A second drop near your nostrils. You don't move. Then a dozen. 100. The storm opens. And just like that, air returns. You breathe. Slowly, deeply. Your body shudders once, not from pain, but from recognition. Rain is your permission slip. You taste the oxygen not through open mouth or lungs, but through capillaries along the throat, through membranes along your cloaca, through ancient, careful architecture that nature packed into you like secrets. Some scientists say you can absorb up to 70% of your needed oxygen through water contact alone. Others argue it's less, that you're exaggerating. Historians still debate whether certain fossil turtles developed this rain-breathing behavior as a late-stage evolution or if it's been with you since the Triassic. Doesn't really matter, does it? You're breathing now. You shift, just slightly. The mud loosens. Your front claw stirs a rivulet of water and you inhale through the ripple. There's something else in the rain warmth. Hope. Okay, let's not get romantic. But you do feel the return of function, like someone restarting a very old computer. Your neck twitches, your back legs respond. Above, frogs begin to croak. Traitors who can leap, flee, vanish. You forgive them. They weren't built to wait like you were. A single bird screams somewhere distant and you remember sound. Thunder follows louder this time, a deep rolling bellow that seems to say, "I see you." Or maybe, "I'm sorry for the wait." There are people somewhere in the far future who will dig into floodplains and uncover your kind, petrified mid-breath encased in fossilized raindrops and suspended lungs. Some of them will say you drowned. Others will say you never woke. Just a few will understand you were waiting. An odd detail. Sure, some turtles today can absorb oxygen through their rear ends. Yes, their butts. It's called cloacal respiration. Go ahead, giggle. The ancient versions of you didn't get the same luxury. It was rain or nothing. You begin to emerge not with grace, but with the slow awkwardness of a half-forgotten machine warming up after centuries. A nostril opens wider. A leg pushes. You rise like a ghost from beneath the crust, slick and heavy, shedding pieces of dried earth from your back like a crumbling tombstone. You don't roar, you don't sing, you don't even look angry. You're just here again. This ritual has repeated for millennia in swamps and deltas and prehistoric coasts that no longer exist. You don't question it. You're not here to innovate. You're here to persist. The rain softens now, but the mud is already wet enough. You exhale through the throat quietly, a sigh no one will hear. And for the first time in months, your heart beats twice in a row. You don't remember choosing this life. That's not how it works. You were born into a lineage that made a long, strange gamble that armor and patience could outlast speed and lungs. And for a while it worked until the armor started to betray you. Your shell, magnificent and cursed, is both fortress and prison. It keeps predators out, but it also keeps breath in. And in dry seasons, that breath becomes a debt, one you pay off by doing absolutely nothing. You drag yourself a few inches through the loosened mud, your claws flexing with effort that would seem laughable to a mammal. If a gazelle saw you move, it would die of secondhand frustration. But you don't need to move fast, you just need to survive the waiting. When the earth is soaked, the pores in your body begin to drink. Not water exactly, though that too, but air hidden in the water bubbles, cradled in every inch of soft clay. You take it in through the folds of your throat, through the lining near your tail, even through the stretched skin near the tops of your legs. Every square inch becomes a gill. But only when the soil is wet enough. In the dry, your shell turns against you. It traps heat. It traps carbon dioxide. It makes you heavier than the air can forgive. You lie motionless because motion means metabolism, and metabolism means oxygen, and you ran out of that 3 weeks ago. You think of it like this: your shell is a lung that forgot how to breathe on its own. A fossilized rib cage, a bone-shaped dome, a prehistoric oven with no escape hatch. You live inside your own curse, and you've made peace with it. Sort of. A few feet away, another shell shifts. You don't look. You can't really see well in the rain-slick gloom, but you feel the mud vibrate. Another one of your kind coming up for the same reason. A silent reunion. No greetings, just breath. The younger ones rise first. They haven't learned the full patience yet. They come up twitchy, their eyes bulging with instinct, necks already stretching for floating leaves for glimpses of the surface world. They're always a little reckless, and that's fine. You were once like that before the dry years stretched longer and longer before your joints began to stiffen with sediment. Now you wait until the mud starts to sing. Yes, sing. Not with music, but with sound water dancing on wet clay, the air bubbling up like tiny applause. It's your signal, not thunder, not warmth, just that tiny melody of a dissolution dirt surrendering to water. Back when this floodplain was still a swampy lagoon, your shell was an advantage. Your ancestors floated on the tides like living canoes, their flat undersides catching currents, their domes catching sunlight. They were armored rafts immune to most predators, unimpressed by storms. But the world dried. You stayed, and your lungs, adapted for surface breathing, began to fight your lifestyle. You needed air, but the water dried up. You needed water, but the land betrayed you. So your body did the only thing it could. It slowed. It fossilized in real time. When the dry seasons hit hardest, you developed a rhythm. Eat as much as you can during the wet months. Then dig yourself into the banks and do nothing. For weeks, sometimes months. You'd stop eating, Stop moving. Reduce your breathing to a whisper of its former self. Biologists would later call this aestivation, the hot weather cousin to hibernation. But those terms are too neat. What you do is less science, more surrender. You become a suggestion, a blueprint of a creature stored in a muddy envelope. And when the rain finally comes, it doesn't save you, it permits you. You don't spring to life, you simply resume. It's still debated whether your kind evolved this trait in one specific region, an ancient basin somewhere near what would become Central Asia, or whether it evolved multiple times in different turtle species as a desperate adaptation to sudden droughts. There are fossil beds in both Africa and South America that show nearly identical shell structures. Did you all share a common ancestor, or did the planet just keep forcing the same solution on different timelines? Historians still argue about it, probably over coffee. You just breathe again. A passing crocodile, not a big one. Just a young river snout paddles through the rising puddles. It ignores you. You ignore it. There's an understanding here. Predators know not to waste energy on things that look like boulders. And you don't give off much of a scent, not when your body's been sealed in clay for 6 weeks. Besides, you're barely here. You dream sometimes in the mud. Not vivid stories, just textures. The feeling of rain on your eyelids. The low groan of thunder that shakes your stomach from the outside. The weight of your own shell pressing into you like a backward cradle. Some have speculated that this half-dreaming state is where your brain rewires itself, where you process memory like static on an old TV. Also, fun fact, turtles can actually breathe through their butts. You already knew this, you're a turtle. But it bears repeating because some people will never get tired of that particular bit of trivia. The rain has slowed now a drizzle, but you've taken enough. Your body is rebooting. You stretch a leg, push a little farther. Clay peels from your eyes like the thinnest mask. You blink. And for the first time in what feels like forever, the sky has color again. Not blue, more of a bruised gray, but it's open, and that's what matters. You turn your head ever so slightly toward the next patch of softened earth. There might be food there, or there might be nothing. Doesn't matter. You've been breathing for 10 minutes. You are unstoppable. This used to be a sea, not a poetic exaggeration, not a metaphor, an actual shallow rolling sea, sun-warmed and syrup-thick with life. Your ancestors swam through it like silent oars weaving between coral pillars and ammonite swarms drifting past jellyfish the size of carts and reeds taller than dinosaurs. The air back then was dense and indulgent, heavy with oxygen almost too rich to breathe without bursting into flame. You remember it in your bones not because you were there, but because your shell was shaped by it. This dome on your back. It's an inheritance from a world that's gone. A tide pool turned tomb. A gift wrapped in limestone and regret. Now there is no sea. Just silt. A flat mosaic of dry, cracked clay interrupted by the occasional bone, the occasional stubborn fern, and the deeply buried hum of something ancient that refuses to stop waiting. You shuffle forward half a meter and feel the resistance of mud loosening around you. It's like walking through memory, everything slow, thick, and sticky with the past. There are grooves beneath your claws that look suspiciously like the ones you made last season, or the season before. Your life is a loop. Above you, the wind picks up not enough to cool, but enough to stir. Bits of ash-colored grass twitch. A termite mound groans. The smell of fresh water is gone again, replaced by dust and dry promises. But the earth is still soft under you. For now. There was a time when your kind ruled these dried-up coasts. Not as predators, not as kings, but as fixtures, permanent, inevitable, immovable. When mammals were still twitchy little shadows in the ferns, you were already building strategies for staying put. While everything else ran from change, you sat in it. You folded it around your body like a blanket. It's hard to believe, but this whole plain, now so pale and dry, was once a mosaic of tidal inlets, mangrove belts, and coastal lagoons. You could drift from one end to another without ever dragging your belly through dust. But somewhere between the warm epochs and the volcanic tantrums, the ocean started to leave. Not quickly, just less often, like a guest who forgets to visit. The tides stopped reaching, the rain came slower, and then eventually not at all. Your body didn't protest, it adjusted. Your lungs, which once flared in the salty wind, learned how to wait inside clay. Your skin toughened. Your metabolism began to whisper instead of shout. You lost the shine your ancestors had, but gained time instead. Some of your distant cousins tried to leave. They followed retreating waters inland, looking for newer, wetter pastures. Some even made it. Others cracked open under a sun too ambitious for bone. You did not follow. Not because you're noble, because you're stubborn. The sea dried, but you stayed. And so your shell became a storage unit. Not for food, not for water, for breath. You learned to trap oxygen during the rains, hold it like a grudge. The soft tissue inside you folded in strange ways, creating chambers and reserves pockets where air could linger. And when that wasn't enough, your very blood began to thin out, becoming better at clinging to what little oxygen remained. Scientists will later call this an extreme anaerobic capacity. They'll write papers about your ability to function with almost no oxygen for weeks. They'll marvel at your heart's ability to slow to 2 beats per minute. They'll be impressed by your near-death routine. They'll forget you did all this not to be impressive but to not die. Historians still debate whether this kind of adaptation came from a specific climate event, a rapid shift, maybe a megadrought, or if it was slow erosion over millennia. The fossil record offers conflicting timelines. Some shells show sudden deformation. Others are perfectly preserved right up until they're not. You do not debate. You crawl. Another turtle passes you in the muck, half submerged and moving like a piece of driftwood with intent. You don't nod. You don't greet. You just exist near each other. It's the turtle version of a high five. You're still breathing. Cool, me too. Sometimes in the deeper mud pockets, you see remnants of other shells embedded sideways, ribs cracked in the drying limbs, curled inwards like they were trying to hold the breath they'd already lost. You don't stare. You don't mourn. But you do remember. You remember the one that didn't wake 2 seasons ago, big, strong, old. She went under during a mild dry spell, dug into her usual patch, and simply never came back up. When the rains returned, her shell remained still. The mud around her stayed smooth. Her breathing hole never opened. She had outwaited time. It happens. There's an odd human story, by the way, about how some ancient tribes in coastal regions believed giant turtle shells echoed like the sea. They'd use the hollows as drums, beating rhythms into them to summon the water back. The irony, of course, is that they were probably thumping on the graves of creatures that once knew the ocean personally. Your shell wouldn't make a good drum. It's too cracked, too repaired, too full of tiny memories. You rest now halfway between submerged and surfaced. Your snout tilted slightly above the earthline. You listen to the soil breathe, not with sound, with pressure, with moisture, with the barely perceptible shift of air returning to its rightful places. The sky is still open, but you know it won't last. This was a small storm, a teaser, enough to let you breathe, not enough to let you live. Soon the crust will harden again, and you'll have to choose dig back down or risk staying up. Neither option is exciting. But you weren't built for excitement. You were built for remembering how the world used to move, and for staying in place when it stops. The first drop doesn't land on you. It lands next to you, and the mud drinks it before you can even register the sound. It's a cruel tease. You don't move. You've learned that hope doesn't count until it's falling by the handful. Then another. This one lands square on your nostril. A perfect hit. It runs sideways, mixes with the dust caked there, and disappears into the side of your face like a vanishing pulse. You blink. That's all. Just once. And then at last the storm commits. It's not dramatic yet, but it's real. A consistent patter soft at first like someone testing a drum. You shift slightly to expose more of your shell. Your body has already begun the process of becoming again. Because this is how it works, rain doesn't wake you, it unseals you. Your breathing doesn't start with a gasp, it starts with a sip. See, rain in your world doesn't just fall, it seeps. It dissolves barriers. It softens the caked-over layers of your burrow, unlocks the mineral glue that's held your snout shut for weeks. You don't breathe through water, you breathe with it. Your body extracts oxygen directly from the slurry around you, drawing in air molecules freed by the storm's endless tapping. Scientists will try to simplify it for people. They'll say, it's diffusion across mucous membranes. But that's like calling music vibrating air. Technically true, but soul-crushingly dull. You know what it really is? It's breathing with your skin. The sensation is strange even after a lifetime of doing it. It's not like drawing air into lungs. It's more like 1,000 invisible straws scattered across your body, each one sipping from the rain. You feel it along your throat, your belly, your legs. Even the thin tissues near your cloaca, which, yes, we're bringing up again because in turtles everything weird happens back there. The air slips in without pressure. It dissolves into you like sugar in warm tea. Your blood thick and lazy during the dry stirs into motion. It's not excited yet, just interested. You feel your heart shift once, a full beat, then another. You're back. You stretch your legs out just a little. One claw brushes against something hard beneath the mud. Not a rock. Another shell, smaller, probably one of the juveniles. You don't react. You both knew the others were buried nearby. It's just comforting to feel proof. Sometimes you wonder what the storm feels like from above. Whether the sky knows what it triggers down here. Whether clouds care. Probably not. But you imagine they'd like the idea that their tantrums give breath to creatures like you. This is how it's always been. Long before rivers became roads, before humans started measuring things with clocks. This pattern existed: bury, seal, wait, sip. The rhythm of your breath is older than language, older than mammals, older than the idea of survival as a competition. Historians still debate whether this behavior, this breath-waiting, rain-activated pause, first evolved as a desperate adaptation or as part of your aquatic ancestry. Some say the ancient wetlands forced you into it. Others say you were always halfway between water and land, and rain was simply your natural metronome. The truth? Probably both. That's how nature works. It doesn't pick a lane. It picks whatever keeps you breathing. Rain thickens. It hits your shell with more authority now, louder, faster. The grooves in your carapace fill with rivulets that slide along the channels like little streams. You tilt your body ever so slightly, letting the water slide across you toward your snout. You inhale through mud so saturated it moves with your breath. And it hits different. The oxygen, raw and diluted in rain, reaches the back of your mouth and floods your lungs with something sharper than air. It's a rush, a slow, gentle, prehistoric adrenaline. You don't open your mouth. There's no need. Your throat is already filtering air through the mucus-lined tubes that run along its inside. Tiny blood vessels press against the lining, ready to grab any molecule of oxygen that passes by. It's absurd, honestly, how little oxygen you need. In the dry season, you survived on what would kill a bird in 5 minutes. But now with just a few dozen milliliters per breath, you feel like a god. You could conquer a continent, if it wasn't so far. You still don't move much. Movement is for creatures who live in the moment. You live in seasons. When you finally do lift your head, it's with the grace of a tectonic plate. The motion ripples through the mud around you, alerting other turtles nearby. One head lifts, then another. A shell nudges into yours, a small one, a yearling maybe? You don't mind. It's common to cluster together when the rains come, especially in places where the soil is particularly oxygen-rich. Not that you all know that consciously. You just feel it. The way roots find water. The way humans find Wi-Fi. Your eyes open wider, adjusting to the dark drizzle. The world hasn't changed much. It's still brown, still soggy, still quiet. But the air feels full. Every inhale is a surprise party. You stretch your legs a little farther. You even wiggle your tail. You're alive and you're allowed to be. Fun fact, some modern-day turtles can sleep underwater for months, surviving only on skin-breathing techniques and a truly alarming ability to ignore their own bladder. But you're not modern. You're ancient, and your technique is older than any mammal's lungs. The rain taps louder now. The puddles begin to collect in small pools. You shift again, finally pulling your front half free of the earth entirely. The mud collapses where your chest had been, leaving a perfect imprint of your shape. If some curious human wandered here now, they'd mistake your track for a fossil bed, so slow is your exit, so complete is your mold, but you're not a fossil, not yet. Your breath and waiting wrapped in history and hardened by drought. You inhale again. Rain is no longer falling. It is flowing. You could have left a long time ago when the rains became less predictable and the clay took longer to soften. Others started walking. Not many. Just the few who had slimmer shells, faster legs, a little less patience. They marched east, or maybe west. No one really took notes. But they didn't wait. That's what mattered. You stayed. Not because you're brave, not because you're wise. You stayed because you had to. Your shell, for all its ancient poetry and survivalist mystique, makes migration laughably impractical. You're not built for travel. You're built for endurance. The kind of endurance that means sit still until the world remembers you. When the dry season stretched into dry years, the smarter reptiles left first. The ones with high metabolisms, light frames, limbs that actually enjoy being limbs. You heard them once talking like wind through reeds as they left. Not with words, but with rustles. Urgency. You didn't follow. Your body is a monument. A collapsed cathedral with lungs inside. You weigh too much in every direction. Your shell drags, your legs wobble, and you're breathing well. Your breathing only works when the earth is wet. Imagine trying to walk across an arid plain, each step drying your skin further, each breath shallower than the last. That's not a journey. That's a death sentence written in dust. So you didn't go. And now you live in a patch of land others call forsaken. A place that remembers water only in puddles and ghosts. But you know where the moisture hides. Beneath layers of silt, in pockets of lowland mud, in shaded clay beds where the sun forgets to bake. This is where you wait. This is where you breathe. A heron passes overhead, its shadow slicing across the soft gray light like a blade. It makes no sound. You don't flinch. You've learned that stillness is your camouflage. Movement invites curiosity, and curiosity from above usually ends with a beak in the face. Not that many predators try to eat you anymore. Most figured out centuries ago that turtle meat wrapped in boulder is a high-effort, low-reward meal. The smarter scavengers just wait. They know your kind sometimes doesn't wake. They find the ones who miss the rain and peel the lids off your shells like reluctant fruit. Still, you bury yourself deep enough. You place your body at the angle that best catches rising rainwater. You point your nostrils upward in hope and defiance. You memorize the angle of last season's puddles. You build your own map over years through silt and memory. It's not instinct. It's practice. You hear people say animals are dumb, that turtles just do what they do. But you're a strategist, a cartographer of breath. Your world is made of inches and you've mastered every single one. Historians still debate whether large prehistoric turtles that stayed behind in drying regions did so out of environmental pressure or because their bodies simply couldn't adapt fast enough. Did evolution pin them down, or did they choose the stillness out of some strange turtle logic? You have your answer. You didn't stay because you couldn't move. You stayed because moving meant breathing less, and you like breathing. Another turtle shell shifts beside you, a younger one, not quite smooth with a chip on the ridge. You remember that chip? It happened 2 years ago during the brief mating window. Someone got overeager and tried a new angle. You admire the confidence, not the accuracy. They look at you now, if looking is the right word, for that half-lidded mud-blurred glance, and you both register each other's existence. No greeting, just acknowledgement. The reptilian equivalent of still here. Yeah, you both inch toward a shallow dip in the ground. A memory of a puddle lives there. If you're lucky, it'll collect enough rain for drinking. If not, you'll wait beside it anyway, just in case. You stretch your neck. Not far, just enough to test the air. It's warmer now. The storm is moving east, pulling its drama behind it. The air feels lighter, not in a good way, in the this moment won't last way. You breathe again, savoring the full inhale like a rare fruit. Your lungs ache just slightly, a reminder that you're awake. That you're not supposed to be not fully. You're supposed to be halfway back under. But rain gives permission, and you don't waste that. By the way, fun fact, some species of desert tortoise today will wait underground for over a year, surviving entirely on stored water and metabolic slowdowns. One was documented not drinking for 18 months. You respect that. Amateur, sure, but still impressive. A breeze moves through the grass nearby, tall, pale, brittle stuff. It leans, then straightens. It looks indecisive, like it's not sure if it's supposed to be alive yet. You get it. You watch a beetle crawl across the top of a shell. It is unaware of what it's walking on. You think briefly about turning your head and snapping at it just to feel like a predator again. But it's too far, and not worth the energy. Because that's the thing, they don't understand how much effort even looking takes when your entire existence is based on waiting. But you do it. You say. You wake when the storm says wake. You breathe when the rain allows. You rise barely and roll your slow body through the shallows of old puddles, looking for food that doesn't scream or run away. You're not lazy. You're strategic. And when the clouds finally part, when the last drops vanish into cracked dirt, you'll remember your favorite spot. The one where the soil breathes best, and you'll begin the ritual of sinking again. Because this isn't a mistake. This is the life you chose. Or maybe the one that chose you. Either way, you're still breathing. There's no ceremony to it. No final trumpet or signal, just a slow retreat. You've had your breath. You've sipped what you could from the rain-soaked mud felt. Your heart stirred back to a livable rhythm, blinked at the dull world for a few brief hours. And now, as the clouds drain westward and the heat starts pressing on the back of your shell again, you know it's time. Time to go under. Again. The ritual isn't dramatic, but it is practiced precise even. Every step has weight. Every pause is calculated. You begin by finding the right patch, not too dry, not too soggy. You've memorized its feel. The soil there yields just enough. It exhales slowly when pressed. You test it first with your front claws. You make a slow-motion kneading gesture like an ancient baker returning to dough. Then you start to dig. It's not like mammalian digging. There's no frantic urgency. You're not tunneling. You're folding yourself into the earth. Sinking rather than pushing, the rear legs shift. The front ones brace. You twist your weight slightly using your own bulk to displace mud. The soil rises along your sides as you press your body downward, carving out a depression shaped precisely to your curve. You exhale. That part is important. Your lungs can't hold full pressure while you dig. That breath has to leave. You let it go in a slow hiss that barely escapes the throat. The mud around your mouth darkens as the moist air leaks into it. This is how you prepare for stillness, by breathing out first. It feels counterintuitive to others. Why release breath when you're about to need it most? But your kind has done this for millions of years. It's not about storing oxygen. It's about surrender. The less you hold, the longer you last. Once your lower body is buried, you rotate your hips slightly. Just a notch. Enough to anchor. Your shell settles like a lid, closing on a pot. There's comfort in the symmetry. You feel the soil press gently against the underside of your dome. It's a fit you've grown into season after season. a match between body and earth, a key in a prehistoric lock. The juveniles mimic this now. You can sense them fidgeting, repositioning, some overdoing it, some still unsure how deep to go. You don't look at them. That's not how turtles mentor. You just do your part, and if they're wise, they'll learn through watching. Or through surviving. Above you, the light turns hot again. That sour, late afternoon glare returns. The kind that makes the ground smell like cooked dust. You close your eyes. You don't need to see it. You can feel the sun judging you. Fun fact, many reptiles use the angle of the sun to navigate. Turtles too, but not now. Not here. The sky offers no map, just deadlines. As you descend, you begin to shut things off. Not consciously, but through ancient programming. Your heart slows again. Your kidneys stop filtering. Your digestion, already minimal, halts completely. You are becoming stillness. Historians still debate whether ancient turtles like you entered this state by accident during a series of brutal droughts or whether it was passed down intentionally, survival baked into biology. Some think it began as a fluke. One turtle accidentally buried itself too long and woke up still alive. Others argue it was selected over generations as only the deepest sleepers returned. No one asks what it feels like. You'd say it feels like shrinking. Not in size, in presence. You become less of a body, more of an idea. A heartbeat that happens once every few minutes, a breath stretched across hours. You settle your front limbs flat now. Your claws curl inward slightly, not from sleep, but because that shape uses less energy. Your muscles go quiet. Your eyes dim beneath a thin lid of mud-stained membrane. You can still see light, but just barely. You let it blur into amber. Then you make the final move. Your snout sinks, not entirely, just enough to seal the top edge beneath a loose pocket of moist air. A bubble trap. You press your nostrils upward, just barely touching the crust. That's the key. The air still moves up there, not much, but enough. You will sip from that air as long as it lasts. Maybe a week, maybe more. After that, you'll rely on the oxygen in the soil water. And after that, if the dry spell holds, you'll stop altogether. Not die, just stop. A temporary stillness, a voluntary vanishing. This is not hibernation. Hibernation is cozy, planned, timed to frost. You don't have frost. You have sun that forgets mercy. You have soil that wants to bake you into a statue. Your stillness is not a sleep, it's a standoff. And you've learned to win it. The beetle from earlier now perches on a cracked reed nearby. It clicks its wings once, twice, then lifts off into the heat. You don't watch it leave. Your eyes are nearly shut. Your breath is already faint. But inside, a tiny part of you stays awake. That part listens for thunder. That part remembers the shape of falling rain. Because that's the real truth, you don't sleep. You wait. You wait with the patience of continents, with the silence of fossils, with lungs that remember better days. And if the storm comes back before you vanish completely, you'll rise again. Not with joy, not with celebration, just breath. Because that's enough. You disappeared before the others did. That's the part no one talks about, how your kind slipped away from entire landscapes while the mammoths were still stomping around, while saber-toothed cats still lounged in the shade of tar pits, while early humans were just beginning to wonder if maybe fire was a personality trait. You were already gone. Not extinct, not yet. Just missing. In fossil records, it's called range retraction, a fancy term for shrinking footprints. It means you used to be here, but then one day you weren't. And it wasn't dramatic. No asteroid, no plague, no war. Just the quiet vanishing that happens when rain forgets to come back. Your shells. The wide, beautifully awkward kind stop appearing in certain sediment layers. One layer plenty, next layer up. Nothing. Scientists dig, scratch their heads, and make educated guesses. Climate shift. Possibly competition, maybe just bad luck. Who knows? Historians still debate whether this retreat happened because your breathing strategy failed in the long term or because rising predators, figured out how to exploit your pause. There's evidence of both. Some turtle shells from later strata show bite marks, deep grooves from jaws that didn't wait for rain. Others are intact, perfectly sealed, as if you simply lay down and never got back up. That last one. More common than people think. And yet you didn't vanish all at once. Not everywhere. Some populations clung on in isolated mud basins and rain-fed depressions in the shadowy fringes of what were once lush coasts. You became local myths, land spirits, river watchers. Your strategy, breathe only when it rains, worked in the places where clouds still visited. But as climates shifted, those places shrank. The sky forgot you. Still, you didn't adapt. Why would you? You had survived longer than most. You'd watched the sea come and go like a moody neighbor. You'd outlived creatures with better claws, sharper eyes, faster feet. You'd made a life out of not moving. That strategy doesn't rewrite itself just because the map gets smaller, so your kind began to vanish. One swamp dried and no one re-emerged from its bed. One hollow became too dry to sink into. One river changed its course and a whole lineage stayed behind, too slow to follow the water. Too loyal, or too proud. It wasn't dramatic. There were no turtle graveyards, no mass die-offs with newspaper headlines. Just silence. Shells that stayed sealed, breathing holes that never opened again. The strangest part, the animals that remained didn't even notice you were gone. Birds kept nesting. Lizards kept skittering. Even the insects barely blinked, because to them you were never active enough to be missed. To them you'd always been background. And maybe that's fair. Your world was never fast, never loud. Your victories were measured in survived droughts, not battles won. While predators fought for territory and dominance, you were busy holding your breath under clay. Speaking of predators, they changed too. The smart ones learned the difference between a dead turtle and a dormant one. They sniffed at shells that hadn't cracked, learned the smell of still warm breath sealed beneath earth. Some even figured out your timing, watched for the storms waited by your old burial sites, jaws ready when you surfaced for your first sip of air. That's a cheery thought, right? You wake up from weeks of suspended breath. Lift your head and hello, someone's hungry. It didn't happen often, but often enough. Some of your kin developed little behaviors in response. They'd rise slower, keep one eye under mud, listen first. Some stayed under just a little longer until the scavengers got bored. Others buried themselves deeper than ever before, risking suffocation to avoid becoming breakfast. This wasn't evolution in the traditional sense, it was improvisation. Personal quirks, last-minute strategies. Sometimes they worked, but eventually the math got cruel. Less rain, more predators, less oxygen, more time buried. And fewer turtles coming back up. The thing is, no one marked your passing. There's no great elegy for a breath that waited too long. No dirge for a shell buried beneath silence. You left no bones in dramatic piles, no epic skeletons posed in battle. Just the occasional perfect fossil sealed mid-pose, mid-weight. They look like they're still alive, those fossils. Like you could pour water on them and they'd blink awake. People find them today and whisper, "How did this one die?" But you know better. It didn't die. It simply ran out of time. And the shell, your grand monument, is part of the reason. It preserves you so perfectly that the world can't tell if you're dead or just very, very patient. Fun fact, in one famous archaeological dig, scientists uncovered a prehistoric turtle fossil with its head still extended, mouth slightly open, surrounded by fossilized raindrop impressions. They argued for weeks about what killed it. Some said suffocation, others said a sudden dry snap. One eccentric paper claimed it might have drowned. You laughed at that one. No one considered the obvious. It waited too long for the rain. You're not extinct, not yet. Some of your kind linger tucked into the margins of wetlands and flooded forests. Survivors of a system that once spanned continents. They breathe during storms, they vanish in sun. But their numbers are shadows of shadows. And every year, fewer come back up. You rest now. Body still, breath shallow, heart slow. You're not sad. You don't think about endings like humans do. You just know that waiting is harder than it used to be. And the sky, it's taking its time. You don't just breathe during rain. You listen to it. To most creatures, rain is just water wet loud, maybe inconvenient. But to you, it's a language. It tells you things. The size of the droplets, the angle they fall, the way they strike your shell. They all carry meaning. And you've learned to read it the way a sailor reads waves or a priest reads smoke. The first thing rain tells you is, wake up. But that's just the greeting. The real message that comes in rhythms, because rain doesn't fall the same way twice. A soft drizzle says maybe. A slow soaking curtain says prepare. A sudden violent burst of drops the size of berries says now. Right now the storm says something more subtle. Something like wait, but don't wait too long. You know this kind. It'll pass quickly. Just a few hours of breathing may be enough to rise fully and sip something off the ferns. Not enough for travel. Not enough for mating. Just enough to survive. Which is fine. You've had worse. You lift your head a little higher, tilting toward the center of the falling water. Your nostrils flare slightly. You smell pollen, fresh rot, worms unbothered by mud. But mostly you smell timing, because the rain also tells you when to come up, when to rise, when to breed, when to vanish again. For your kind, rainfall isn't weather, it's a calendar. There's no mating season without storms, no hatching season, no motion at all. Your world is built around these sky-tempered tantrums. That's why you don't just react to rain, you wait for the right kind. There are those among your kind who rose too early, tricked by a false rain. They climbed from their hollows with hope in their hearts and crust still stuck to their eyelids, and then the sky vanished, leaving them to bake before they could bury again. Others waited too long. The rain came and went, and they slept right through it. Woke to dust. Died not from hunger or heat, but from silence. Historians still debate how prehistoric turtles knew the difference. Some say it was pressure, the way barometric shifts press against your shell. Others believe it's vibration, that your plastron resonates with certain storm frequencies. A few insist it's just ancestral memory-refined guesswork carved into bone over millennia. You think it's all of those and also none. You think the answer is simpler, you listen. Right now, the pattern has changed. Thicker drops, softer landing. The kind of rain that seeps rather than strikes. This means something new. You begin to stir, not fully, just enough to test your body's readiness. Front legs flex, neck rolls slightly, your lungs taste the shift in air quality, more oxygen, fewer particles. You exhale through mud like a slow sigh through a blocked nose. The soil trembles gently around your face. You're here. You're breathing, but you're not rising yet. Not until the rain gives the second signal, and then there it is. A sudden drop in air temperature, subtle but decisive. The kind that comes with consistent cloud cover. The kind that says the sun won't interrupt. You rise, not fast, never fast, but deliberately. Shell first, then snout. The mud slips from you in long ribbons, falling away like old skin. You blink. The world is quiet, not silent, just hushed. You glance slowly because your neck is built like a cautious accordion toward the reed bank. Another turtle is surfacing, and you recognize them. Not by name, not by anything humans would catalog, but by motion. Everyone in your community moves with a slightly different rhythm, a kind of mud signature. This one twitches too early every time. They're still learning. You don't judge, you just remember. You both begin the crawl toward the shallows. Because this kind of rain, the good kind, doesn't just allow breathing. It allows connection. Mating, for example, it only happens after the second rain. The one that lingers, The one that saturates the lower banks just enough to soften the ground, but not drown the nests. You felt that urge before, sharp and ancient, buried deep between your lungs and your legs. Not now, though. This storm isn't long enough, but it's enough to gather. Enough to make eye contact slow and reptilian as it may be, and remind each other we're still here. That's the second thing rain does. It signals you're not alone. Fun fact. Some modern tortoises during droughts will congregate in the shadiest, coolest spots, even if they aren't breeding. Just to share moisture, to lie still together. That instinct, you invented it. In prehistoric times, your kind did the same. When rains came, turtles that had waited alone for months would rise in unison. They'd gather like rocks that remembered how to walk. They didn't speak, of course not. But the moment was loud with recognition. Today, it's you and three others. You position yourself near a shallow pool that smells faintly of root rot and something sour. It's good soil for eggs. Not that you'll lay now, but your body remembers. Another shifts beside you. The young one with the chipped ridge. They nudge your shell not affectionately, not even on purpose, but with just enough pressure that you register their presence. You stay there together, breathing. The rain falls softer now, less urgent. The kind of rain that says you've got an hour or two. You accept the gift. No need to rush. You breathe with others now, not synchronized, but shared. And that too is a kind of survival. Because while the world above may not notice your absence, while mammoths and owls and humans come and go like sparks, you remain. You rise when the sky permits. You breathe when the rain arrives. And you remind each other. This is still a world where water touches earth and earth lets you live. For now, you've probably never heard a turtle drum. That's fair. You're not supposed to. It's not a sound meant for ears. It's the kind of sound that moves through ground, not air. Something between a heartbeat and a memory. Long ago, long after the rains had started to vanish, but long before you gave up entirely, there were humans. Not the clever satellite-using kind. The kind that still wore dirt like fashion and built their homes out of bark and bone. They didn't study you. They watched you. When they found the empty shells abandoned clean curved, like the dome of a forgotten temple, they didn't think dead turtle. They thought instrument. And so they drummed. Some used sticks. Some used their palms. Some sat in circles around the hollow shells and pounded rhythms into them that mimicked the rain. Slow then faster. They believed, perhaps not wrongly, that the sound would call the water back. And maybe they were right. Your shell, after all, is an echo chamber. When you're alive, it's a damp, muted hum. A pressure vessel for silence, but once you're gone, it resonates. A single strike and the vibrations bounce off the bone like thunder inside a rib cage. Humans learned to listen, and they made songs from your silence. Funny thing. They never figured out what kind of creature once lived inside those drums. To them, you were just a shell, a gift, a soundbox from the earth. You shift slightly now, your shell shedding another line of mud. You can feel it the way the water pools in the grooves carved into your back. Those channels aren't random. They're shaped by age, season, and pressure. They guide water across your body like ancient irrigation. And when rain hits just right, when droplets fall in a certain rhythm, they make a sound. Dunk, dunk, dunk. It's not musical, but it's not random either. You've felt it your whole life. Rain echoing across your back. Rain filling the spaces between your plates. You never thought of it as drumming, but maybe those humans weren't wrong. Maybe your shell does speak. Or maybe everything just sounds like music if you're alone long enough. The air around you thickens, now heavy with the scent of wet roots and old leaves. A good sign. It means the ground will hold its moisture a bit longer. It means the puddles might deepen. It means you don't have to go under just yet. You look to your left, another turtle has risen. An old one. You can tell by the texture of the shell, smoothed at the edges, cracked in the center, weathered like bark. You've seen them before many seasons ago. Neither of you speak, but they recognize your dome. You share a moment of recognition. Then they move to a nearby patch and settle there. No drama, no declarations, just proximity. That's how your kind shows respect. It's said well by no one really, but let's say that ancient turtles passed stories through vibration. That in times when multiple turtles buried themselves together, they learned to interpret each other's heartbeats through soil. A shared slow rhythm, a breathing code tapped through mud. Historians roll their eyes at the idea. There's no evidence, no way to prove communication through heartbeat tremors. Still, wouldn't it be something? A language so slow it takes days to finish a sentence. A message like, still here. You shift again. The drizzle has stopped, but the clouds still linger, which is good. The sun can't scorch through just yet. The mud remains cool, soft. You take a long breath, slow and deliberate through the upper folds of your throat. The air feels cleaner now, more generous. Then you hear a sound you almost forgot. Drumming. Not on purpose, not ritual, just rain sliding from the trees onto your shell in deliberate little taps. It strikes in 3 quick hits, then pauses, then repeats. Tap, 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 alsas, tap, tap, tap. You stay very still, not in fear, in reverence. You remember once being under a tree like this seasons ago when dozens of turtles had gathered beneath the canopy to rise together. The rain had lasted for 3 days. The earth was so wet you could swim between burrows. The air so thick with moisture, breathing felt indulgent. They'd all emerged, then young, old, even the ones you thought hadn't made it. Some had moss on their backs. Others carried snails like passengers, but they came. And the sound of their shells side by side filled with rainwater echoing across each other. It was drumming. Unintentional. Unrepeatable. Sacred, maybe. You like to think the humans heard that once and decided it was worth mimicking. Fun fact, some human cultures really did use turtle shells as instruments. Percussion mostly. Archaeological evidence in both the Americas and Southeast Asia shows that ancient peoples found utility in your domes. Music, ceremony, even divination. They saw magic in your silence. They weren't wrong, because your shell is a kind of spell. It holds a history of breath and stillness. It remembers every storm you've survived, every dry season you didn't. It speaks in its own way through pattern and curve and echo. You press your legs deeper into the mud, feeling the water shift beneath you. You're not ready to sleep again, not yet, but you're close. The clouds are breaking. The rain has moved on, but your shell still hums with its memory. And somewhere nearby, another turtle listens. Even the predators knew you weren't dead. They could smell it. Something in your breath, slow, faint, but real, leaked up through the topsoil. Not much, just enough. A thread of warmth in the clay. A heartbeat beneath dust. The wise ones, the old scavengers, learned to wait beside you. They knew the difference between a rotting shell and a resting one. Foxes, mostly. Wild dogs in some regions. Birds, too, the smarter ones. Not the screamers, the watchers. They circled above you like lazy shadows, their heads tilted with quiet curiosity. Not ready to attack, not yet. Just ready. You were a seasonal buffet. Some waited for the storm to end. That's when you were most vulnerable. When your legs were soft from rest. When your head lifted for the first real breath, blinking mud from your eyes, rising too slow to notice the watching. Others learned to dig. That was worse. Not because it hurt, no, they rarely reached you in time, but because it meant you had to dig deeper next time. It meant your old familiar burrow, the one you used for years, wasn't safe anymore. It meant more effort, more distance, less oxygen. You had to start calculating risk like a mammal. You didn't like it. Predators ruined the rhythm. You shift now, just slightly clawing at a patch of mud that used to be yours. You can still smell the old trail. It smells like yourself plus something else. Something sharp and canine from last season. A wild dog, maybe. You weren't there when it came, but the evidence lingers. So you move, not far. A few feet to the east. A depression near a bent reed. Still moist. Not as perfect, but safer. This is the negotiation now between breath and safety. Before the only threat was dryness, now dryness and teeth. Progress, right? Historians still debate how far back this predator awareness goes. There's fossil evidence of tooth marks on ancient shells, some deep enough to suggest an attempted kill, others more like curiosity bites. One dig in North Africa even uncovered a group of turtle remains clustered in a dried-out basin, all with similar puncture wounds. Did a predator stumble upon a sleeping group? Or did the turtles emerge too soon? No one agrees. You think they just got unlucky? That's all survival really is anyway. Good timing. A lucky burrow. A storm that comes when it's supposed to. The predator sleeps through it. You breathe. You live. It's not heroic. It's just luck. You inch forward through the softening mud, your shell dragging like a half-sunken boat. You pause beside a clump of grass. Something rustles nearby. You freeze. You don't freeze because of fear. You freeze because stillness is your greatest weapon. A predator's brain is wired to chase motion. If you don't move, you don't exist. Or at least you don't look worth the trouble. You're not appetizing. Just another rock wearing dirt. Whatever it is, fox, dog, maybe even a small cat, it doesn't lunge. It doesn't even approach. It watches for a moment, then fades into the scrub. You wait another 5 minutes before breathing again. That's your superpower. Patience that would bore a stone. Eventually, you reach a small dip in the earth. A familiar pocket used many times before. You check the scent again. No predators. Not this time. You rotate, scrape, start your slow descent. Fun fact, some turtles today will literally pee to soften the soil before digging back in. Gross, maybe, but effective. The ammonia breaks down dirt structure and makes burial easier. You've never done it yourself, dignity and all, but you respect the technique. As you dig, you feel the soil firm beneath your front legs. It's just moist enough to let you sink. A little firmer than you'd like. You dig slower with more effort, but it'll do. The air is changing again. You taste the first sour bite of sun in the breeze. The rain has moved on. The predators will be back soon. The scavengers will sniff for movement. The birds will circle again. And you'll be under. It's a strange kind of safety. Not invincibility, never that. Just lower odds of being noticed. When you're buried deep with your nostrils pointed upward and your heart slowed to a crawl, you're not dead, but you're not quite here either. You're beneath hunger, beneath sound, beneath interest. Predators don't wait like you do. They get bored, they move on. Your victory is patience. But that doesn't mean you don't remember the ones who weren't lucky. You've passed their shells cracked, split, dragged from the mud too soon. You've heard their stories in the scent of disturbed soil. You've learned where not to dig and where to avoid eye contact with the sky. Still, it's worth it. The rain, the breath, it always is. You take one last look at the pale horizon. The clouds are gone. The birds are returning. The mud is cooling again. You lower your head. Beneath the surface, you feel vibrations, footsteps, small animals, not coming for you, just existing. And then one heavier step, paused, a sniff. You exhale. Nothing to see here. Just a rock. Just a shell. Just another part of the earth. The predator moves on, and you breathe slow and safe. You're buried now, but not gone. The strangest thing happens when turtles gather underground. You don't plan it. There are no invitations, no shell-to-shell messaging. But somehow, every dry season, some of you end up in the same patch of damp earth buried not far apart. A quiet congregation of barely beating hearts, each one spaced just enough to avoid touching, but close enough to feel something. You call it nothing because your kind doesn't name things. But if you were feeling poetic and you're in that kind of mood lately, you'd call it shared breath. Because that's what it is. You can't see each other under the soil, but you sense each other. A whisper of warmth to your left, a soft exhale to your right, a shift in pressure through the clay as another body settles into place. You don't touch, not directly, but the earth does. The mud connects you. And in the stillness of the dry months, that tiny connection is everything. Your body has slowed again. Not fully shut down, there's still enough moisture in the air to allow shallow breathing. But you're returning to your still life rhythm. One breath every few minutes, one heartbeat every 30. And in between those almost sleeps, you listen. The mud vibrates with the breath of others. It's not loud. It's barely a suggestion, but it's enough to know you're not the only one still trying. One of the younger ones is closer than usual. Their breathing is uneven, new to this, maybe nervous. You remember being like that. Digging too shallow, panicking when the sun dried the surface faster than expected. But they've made it this far, they're trying. That's all that matters now. You angle your shell slightly, the tiniest tilt toward them. Not to help, not really, just to offer a shared patch of moist soil. It's cooler there, a bit softer. It might be enough to ease their breath. It's strange, this silent community. No one speaks, no one moves, no one thanks you. But you all feel each other, like islands in a fog sharing the same sea. Historians still debate whether prehistoric turtles clustered together by instinct or necessity. Some argue it was random, that you all simply picked the same moist spots. Others believe it was intentional, that you sensed each other, that shared exhalations created microclimates, underground little oxygen zones, just rich enough to keep multiple bodies alive. One researcher even proposed that turtles might have synchronized their slow breaths to avoid drawing too much air from the same space. A kind of unspoken cooperation, like lungs playing tag. One breathes in, one waits. No way to prove it, but it's a beautiful idea. You feel it now. A soft pulse to your left, someone breathing, then stillness, then a breath from the right. You can't help but smile internally, at least. You've always liked rhythm. Outside, the world keeps changing. The wind shifts, the birds scream, the insects crawl over the surface, oblivious to the quiet society buried just beneath their feet. But you're safe here, together, and the ground remembers. Fun fact: some modern tortoises, when kept in captivity during extreme weather, will voluntarily cluster in corners even when given space to separate. Not for warmth, not out of fear, just to be near. Your kind started that. Long before fences, long before enclosures. Togetherness without touching. Breath without sound. The old turtle is nearby again. You can feel the weight of their presence through the clay. Heavier shell, slower breath. A long pause between movements. They've done this hundreds of times, maybe thousands. You find comfort in that. If they're still doing it, so can you. You let your body settle deeper. Your claws tuck inward. Your limbs fold like ancient machinery preparing for shutdown. You exhale gently, feeling the air drift sideways through the softest part of the soil. A few seconds later, you feel another exhale, not yours. And that's enough. A little signal in the dark, I'm here too. You think back to a season years ago when the ground stayed soft longer than usual. A perfect rain year. Dozens of you surfaced. Some for food, some for warmth. A few just to look at the sky. You remember the quiet joy of being above together, not moving, just basking. A grid of domes, breathing in sync. You didn't talk. You didn't need to. The sun did the talking. You miss that year. But you don't mourn it. You just wait for the next one. Because this world isn't cruel, not always. Sometimes it remembers you. And when it does, when the storms come back and the soil breathes again, you'll rise with the others. Not to celebrate, not to fight, just to breathe. Together. For now, though, you remain. Still, silent, listening. Some of you never made it back up. They say fossils are nature's way of whispering, that every bone left in stone is a kind of sentence, some loud like a skeleton mid-battle and some barely whispers. Yours, whisper breath. That's the cruel poetry of it. The way your kind fossilized wasn't dramatic. No explosions. No mid-run deaths with jaws frozen in a final scream. Just stillness caught too long. Buried too deep, breath held too hard. There are specimens today, real ones, of turtles preserved in clay beds perfectly intact. their shells' unbroken limbs tucked as if asleep, heads angled just enough to suggest they were reaching. And one detail always gets the scientists talking: the lungs are expanded. Mid-inhale, they were breathing. That's the last things they did. And then the mud hardened. The soil dried. The air thinned. And what was meant to be a short wait became forever. Paleontologists still argue about those fossils. Some say the turtles were caught by surprise, a sudden freeze maybe, or a rapid mudslide that buried them while they slept. Others argue it was the droughts, the long, slow ones, the kind where the rain came just late enough that you dared to inhale and then it didn't come at all. Historians still debate whether these turtles suffocated or simply waited too long. One paper even suggested they might have chosen to stop. That when the conditions became too cruel, their bodies initiated a kind of biological surrender, a shutdown more permanent than usual. You don't know. You've never been fossilized, but you do know what it feels like to exhale slowly through mud that doesn't give back. You've felt that panic brief silence when the rain doesn't soak deep enough, when you breathe in and the air tastes thin. You've surfaced before during fall storms, climbed out desperate only to find the clouds were bluffing, the water barely crust deep, the breath barely enough, and you've had to dig down fast, gasping through dry dust, wondering if this would be the season that made a fossil of you. You think of them now. The ones who didn't dig fast enough, or deep enough, or just chose the wrong spot. One in particular comes to mind: old shell, wide, like yours, chipped on the front edge. You remember sharing breath with them once years ago, buried not far apart. You'd synced your rise that season, lifted your heads at the same moment, a silent pact, a memory of rhythm, and then one year they didn't rise. You waited half submerged in the same patch, for hours, for days. The air held moisture, the mud was soft, but nothing moved from their mound. Eventually, a bird found the body, picked at it, got bored, moved on. You never went back to that spot again. But the fossil, it's probably still there. Perfect, unmoving, mid-breath. That's the part humans don't always understand. Fossils aren't just dead things, they're paused things. They're the physical form of a moment that stretched too long. The turtle who thought the rain would be enough, who thought the air would last, who believed for 1 second too long in the rhythm of return. Now those fossils rest in drawers, in museums, under glass. People point at them and marvel at the detail, the shell curvature, the preserved muscle impressions, the faint ridges on the beak. Kids press their noses to the display and whisper, "It looks like it's still alive." And it does. That's the part that haunts the paleontologists. Because some of those fossils, they don't look dead. They look like they're about to blink, about to inhale, about to dig upward into the present tense. And no one knows what to do with that. Some researchers have even said the fossils smell faintly of rainwater when the storage drawers are first opened. Probably imagination, or the dampness of preservation rooms. But you like the idea that even your bones remember rain, that even stone can hold a ghost of breath. Fun fact, in some extremely rare cases, fossilized animals still contain traces of soft tissue, bits of skin, keratin, even blood cells. It's rare but possible, especially in anaerobic conditions. And if any creature could manage that, it's one that evolved to survive without oxygen for weeks. You shift slightly now, deep beneath the earth, your breath faint but steady. You think of all the shells embedded in time, not gone, just sealed. Just stories that no one finished reading. You wonder what they were thinking in their final breath. If they were afraid, if they were calm, if they were angry at the sky. You think maybe they just thought, wait. And then the waiting went on too long. Above you, a bird calls, sharp, too close, probably a scavenger. You don't move. You breathe once. The earth is still soft enough. The air for now is still kind. But you know your margin is thin. So you sleep lighter. You press your shell, deeper angle, your snout just right. You check the rhythm of your own heart. One beat, pause, then another. You are not a fossil. Not yet. The sky isn't weather, it's a god. You've never seen its face, not fully. Just the underside, gray, blistered brooding. But you know its moods. You know the difference between a sky that's watching and one that's just there. Right now, it watches. The clouds roll like beasts across the ceiling of the world, trailing bellies of electricity and hunger. You feel it before it arrives through your shell, through the water's shiver, through the tension of soil that starts to buzz without moving. It's not rain yet. It's promise, pressure. And when that pressure deepens, when it folds the horizon like a closing hand, that's when you rise. You don't rush. You don't blink. You just stir slow and deliberate, lifting your snout through damp crust, scenting the change. It's not just breath you're waiting for. It's the command. This kind of storm isn't just about survival. It's a summons. A call that speaks directly to your bones. You felt it before in younger centuries in thicker forests, when the whole world went quiet before thunder like something sacred was about to walk in. This is one of those days. The first boom isn't sound. It's movement. A ripple through the sky that makes the puddles tremble. The soil flexes around your limbs. You feel your breath skip not out of fear, but recognition. The sky god is here, and it remembers you. You lift your full head now, exposing the top of your shell, letting the first drops strike you like ceremonial drums. Each one echoes louder than it should. Tap, tap, tunk, and you blink, as if someone's speaking a language you forgot you knew. Because for your kind, thunder is history. Long before humans carved myths from lightning bolts, you understood what storms meant. Not just weather, but renewal, permission, the world remembering itself. You've seen storms split forests. You've seen rivers overflow and drag entire termite mounds into the sea. But what matters to you is the rain, the breath, the waking, and the signal it gives. Now, you shift forward, not far, just enough to feel the full weight of the downpour. It floods over you in sheets, washing mud from your back, tracing ancient scars across your dome. You blink water from your eyes. You inhale through nostrils stretched wide. You breathe like it's a blessing, and it is. This is what your ancestors rose for. What they carved into the memory of your lungs. This storm, this pulse, others rise with you now. From the nearby hollow, you see two more domes surface, mud, slick, dark, gleaming. The old one, the younger chipped shell, all of you roused by the same command. No words, no celebration, just rising. The storm isn't subtle. Lightning tears a vertical wound in the sky, followed by thunder so deep, it shifts the air in your throat. You feel it as a vibration before you hear it. Then the rain thickens, becoming a curtain so dense the landscape vanishes into a blur of sound and scent. You're not afraid. You're home. Historians still debate the role weather played in prehistoric animal migrations. Some say the rains were mere catalysts. Others believe they were spiritual events, natural rituals that aligned entire ecosystems. The timing, the temperature, the mineral content of the first runoff, it all mattered. You know it did, because right now in this deluge you feel more alive than any other time of year. Your body no longer aches. Your breath no longer feels borrowed. You are part of the storm's script, one that's been performed for millions of years. Fun fact, some turtles today will only mate during storms, not after, during. Something about the electric charge in the air, the softening of the ground, the vibration of thunder. It awakens instincts that sleep all year. You're not going to mate right now, but your body remembers what it means to be fully on. You turn your head slightly to the left. The chipped shell juvenile watches you. They move forward boldly this time and settle near a puddle filling fast. You don't nod, but there's something shared. Storms do that. They break solitude without breaking silence. A branch snaps in the distance, not from wind, from weight. Predators will be moving too, but they aren't the focus. The sky is. Thunder breaks again, closer now, directly overhead. The ground shakes, and for one brief moment you feel almost mythical. Not a turtle, not an old creature with wet lungs and slow feet, but a vessel, a memory of something older than fear. You imagine the storm and knows your name. Not your personal name, you don't have one, but your kind. The ones who breathed only when commanded. The ones who slept in earth and rose in water. You think maybe the god of rain has been looking for you, and it found you again. You stay there soaking, letting your shell drum, letting your lungs swell, letting the sky speak through you. And even though the rain won't last, nothing does you feel complete, just for now. You are the breath of mud. You are the heartbeat of patience. You are the storm's oldest friend. There was one who never came back. You don't like thinking about her because even though turtles aren't supposed to grieve, you're not convinced that's true. Your kind remembers in ways you can't explain. You carry absences like extra weight in your shell. She was old. Older than you even. Her dome was worn smooth from centuries of rain. The younger turtles liked to follow her not because she led, but because she stayed. Through dry seasons that emptied ponds to dust, through years when the storms never came. She stayed. And then one season she sank and didn't rise. At first, no one noticed. That's normal. Everyone emerges on their own time. But when the rain came again hard and fast and her shell didn't appear, then you knew. The hollow she always used was still sealed. No movement, no shift in mud, no breath. You crept close. You pressed your shell against hers through the soil. Just once. Just to feel if she was still warm. She wasn't. The others gathered slowly, unknowingly. A few younger ones buried nearby perhaps to wait with her. Or maybe because they remembered that she always found the softest patch of earth. Turtles don't mourn in a human way. There were no sounds, no ceremony, but no one left. You all just stayed there. For days. It wasn't about protection. No predator would waste effort trying to get through so many shells. And it wasn't warmth. The storm had passed and the air was already drying. You stayed because her breath had always been the signal, not the rain. Her. She was the one who always emerged first, who always dug the right angle, who always surfaced at the precise moment when the first real breath was possible. And now without her, the rest of you just waited, not for safety, not for oxygen, but for certainty. That's the part people don't see when they look at turtles and think slow, simple, alone. What they don't understand is that breath isn't just about lungs. It's about timing. And that timing is sometimes passed from one shell to the next. No one told you she was gone. You just knew. The mud said nothing. But silence has its own shape. It wrapped around her hollow like a locked door. And you didn't try to open it. You just pressed your snout to the ground and waited with her, for her, around her. That season passed with very little movement. A few of you emerged, drank quickly, then returned underground. Not in fear, in solidarity. Her shell is probably still there, perfectly preserved, facing upward. Snout tilted toward a sky that never answered. Historians would find it one day and marvel at how intact it is. They'd run their fingers over the edges, murmur about sediment layers and micro cracks. They'd assign her a number, a catalog tag, maybe a drawer in a museum. But they'd never know she was the one the others waited for. Fun fact, some ancient turtles show patterns of multiple burials around a single dominant shell, clustered fossils, all aligned to the same angle. Scientists sometimes attribute this to nesting behaviors or environmental pressure. But maybe, just maybe, they were waiting too. Because absence has gravity. And your kind orbits around memory, not speed. You sometimes feel her still. Not in the mud, not in the air, but in the way you hesitate before rising. In the way you test the rain, not once, but twice. In the way you dig half an inch deeper than necessary. That's how she taught, by living, by surviving, by doing it right 100 times until others just followed. There are no turtles that lead, but there are turtles we trust. Now the seasons pass more carefully. The storms feel shorter, the air thinner. You rise, you breathe, you move, but never as far as before. The young ones take longer to surface. They pause in their hollows, waiting to feel the vibration of her first breath. And it never comes. You don't correct them. You just let them wait a little longer. Maybe that's grief, or maybe it's just pattern. Either way, the space she left is still warm in your mind. a hollow in the earth that didn't refill, a breath that never echoed back. And even now, as you press your snout toward the sky after the storm has passed, you feel her absence before the wind even changes. She isn't here, but the memory of her timing remains. You walk again just briefly. The storm has passed. The soil is soaked but already changing the top layer, drying to a soft crust. You can feel the clock ticking in your bones. This breathable moment won't last. But it's enough. You lift your legs, stretch them wide for stability, and shuffle forward in that deliberate glacial rhythm your kind has perfected over epochs. The mud parts reluctantly beneath your weight. You press into it with the same solemnity that built the pyramids, one heavy, soundless step at a time. There's a trail ahead, not a path exactly, just a furrow carved by water. You follow it not because you need to go somewhere, but because movement in itself is worship. A prayer to the storm that gave you breath again. Around you, the world sparkles not in a romantic way, but literally. The clay glazed by the rain reflects the sky in broken pieces. The wind has settled into a gentle breeze. You taste minerals in the air, iron, old roots, a trace of sulfur. Evidence that the storm shook something deep before it moved on. The sky is brighter now. Not kind, just clear. Blue pushing through the shredded remains of cloud. You walk for 10 minutes, maybe 20. That's your window. You pass the chipped shell juvenile again, half submerged in a puddle, their eyes following you with sleepy curiosity. You don't acknowledge them, there's no need. They're watching, learning, doing what you once did when you followed someone older, someone who never rose again. You pause beside a wide, shallow depression, a familiar place. You've nested here before, once, long ago. You remember the way the rain carved veins into the soft walls, how the hatchlings fumbled out of the mud like blind ghosts and vanished into the reeds? You remember that most of them didn't make it, but one or two did. Maybe one of them is nearby now, maybe not. It's a strange comfort knowing your breath, limited as it is, might echo through another shell. A small, quiet survival stitched into the future by nothing but mud and timing. You lower your head. You drink not with your mouth, but through skin, through touch. The dampness on your neck. The droplets on your legs. The thin film of rain along your cloaca. Yes, still funny, still true. Your body absorbs what it can. This is not a feast. It's a ritual. And the clock is still ticking. Your lungs tell you the air is already thinning. The water's beginning to retreat, evaporate. The mud will harden soon. The gods of drought will return. And you'll go back under. But not yet. You tilt your head to the sky. No thunder now, just bird song. The kind that arrives too early after a storm, like it's trying to erase the drama. You let it play. You exhale. You do it slowly so the others might feel it underground. A kind of signal. Not goodbye. Just not yet. Fun fact. Modern turtles have survived in some of the harshest, most unpredictable climates on Earth. Not because of aggression or adaptability, but because of timing. They don't fight change. They fold into it. They make stillness their shield. And so did you. Your whole life has been lived in breathless intervals. Rain, pause. Rain, pause. A conversation with the sky that has never truly ended, just gone quiet between replies. You walk a few more paces, then stop. You know this is it. You turn. You find a fresh patch of softened earth. Not too wet, not too shallow. You test it with your claws the same way your ancestors did before continents even had names. It holds. You begin the slow descent, not a burial. A pause. You tuck your limbs close. Press your snout upward just a little. Feel the air shifting. Hear the wind change. And then stillness. Just below the surface, you listen one last time. A faint echo of thunder far, far away. Maybe it's coming back. Maybe not. But you'll be here, waiting. So here you are once again, buried in breath. You've watched entire worlds change above you. Oceans, vanishing forests, collapsing creatures rising and falling, like myths told in reverse. But you stayed. Not because you lacked the strength to leave, but because your strength was staying. Because you learned the patience of rain, the religion of stillness. In the end, your survival wasn't in fangs or flight. It was in waiting. In breathing only when the sky allowed. In becoming part of the mud and letting your body blur with earth until no one could tell where the turtle ended and the world began. Somewhere far above you, the sun hardens the crust. The storm has moved on. The predators return to their games. The trees begin again. But you remain, still, quiet, perfectly placed. And if someone were to walk past now, they'd see nothing. Just flatness. Maybe a reed swaying. Maybe a patch of damp clay drying slow. But beneath it, you are here. Inhale by inhale, season by season. A shell with breath. The others will remember you, even if they don't know your name, even if no one does. Because one day when the storm returns and the soil stirs again, they'll feel the shape of your waiting. And they'll rise too, not because they were told, but because you taught them how.